And here we are. Another day, another dollar, another wonderful episode of Free Roam with Luke Stevens and the one and only Jor Raptor. How are you doing, my
Oh.
friend? How's your week been?
I think not as interesting as your week or couple of weeks. No,
Yeah.
I've been doing fine, like playing Final Fantasy 16, of course. It's a big thing. Actually had an event in Amsterdam because they of course launched that Warzone map. Um that is like set in Amsterdam, they call it Vandal. So there was like an event in like the Amsterdam Tower, which like overlooks the whole city. They had Oliver Heldens, which like a huge Dutch DJ who also did soundtrack for it. So I went there. That was kind of nice. At some festivals, and apart from that, I've been grinding Final Fantasy. But I'm curious to hear how you are doing.
Yeah, I have been a little busy as well. We had a baby. The baby is now,
Woo!
yeah, just over a week old. So born last, like on the 15th, technically. And so it kind of worked out where we had the podcast on Wednesday, and then the next day we
Yeah,
had a baby, and then this week we're doing it on a Friday. So we technically didn't miss a single week, which is kind of
that's
baller.
crazy.
But it's been really good. The fella is big, healthy, 10 pounds, 6 ounces, monster baby. Nikki is an all-star. She's an animal, a beast. She pushed that damn baby out in 7 minutes. 7 minutes.
Damn.
That's ridiculous. So
Wow.
yeah, we've been doing really, really well. He's already sleeping like 4 or 5 hours straight a night. So I feel
Nice.
bad because I have a buddy who just had his first, and he was telling me it's like, yeah, the sleep has been probably the hardest thing. Just haven't been sleeping. And I'm like, honestly, the baby's a week old and we're already kind of getting back to normal because he just kind of like naturally fit into our routine really comfortably. So it worked out great. Forgive
It's
me.
also if you like look at your channel, like if you didn't know you had a baby, you're like, oh, it's just your usual week.
Yeah. I think I missed
Yeah.
a Monday upload, and that was just because I like forgot to do titling and schedule it properly. So we
Oh,
had
you
it
were busy.
ready.
Oh, weird, man.
Yeah,
Weird.
isn't that weird?
Yeah.
So it worked out nicely. You know, I've got a great team behind me. Of course, shout out to Jacob for being on the grind as always.
Shout
Um,
out.
but we're here, we're vibing, we're ready to talk about some games. There's been a handful of things that have happened over the last week, and some stuff that's happening in real time as we are streaming this live on Luke Stevens Live on Friday, June 23rd. By the way, anybody out there listening on podcast platforms, we are on all of them, so listen to the show wherever you are most comfortable. And also, likes and ratings do help out a ton, of
Yes.
course.
Thanks.
um and if you want to join us live, if you're watching the VOD afterwards, come by. We do this live. We bounce between Wednesdays and Fridays because we just are busy. But we try to communicate when we're doing what, so you
Yeah,
can jump
I
in.
think we want to like nail that Wednesday time slot. I think, right?
Yeah.
That would make the most sense. But yeah, like we just talked about. Uh,
Sometimes stuff happens.
hey, but we're still here every week. So thanks everyone for joining as well. That's really cool to see, even on the unusual scheduling and stuff. If you're watching live, thanks for that.
Yeah,
That's awesome.
absolutely. FM Belch, Nell, Glabine, Aerobrine, all of you guys, thank you for coming out. Much love to all of you. But with that, I mean, let's just jump into it. There's some stuff happening in real time, which I guess we can touch on first and
Yeah.
foremost. What's happening, Mr. Jor Raptor?
So, in case you didn't know, Activision and Microsoft, they're trying to make this deal, or like actually Microsoft is trying to buy Activision Blizzard King. They announced it in January 2021, I think, or 2022. So it's like a year and a half ago, and we really thought, okay, by the end of the year it would be done. We're now like a year and a half later, and it's still not done. Right now, they're in the court, like doing an FTC lawsuit. So FTC is, of course, yeah, trying to block the deal. They don't think it's good for the consumers. Um, Although, like, they're going in. So right now they're cross-examining like Phil Spencer, the head of Xbox, of course, and they're trying. Like, they of course have this narrative where if Microsoft owns Activision Blizzard, that would be bad for gamers because look at what happened with Bethesda. All those games became exclusive. So what if Call of Duty is not on PlayStation anymore? What if in 10 years games will be mostly streaming? Like, I totally think the hardware will stay, but it's already like happening. You can now on a Samsung TV have the Game Pass app and just probably play Starfield in September without even owning an Xbox. That is of course going to evolve, and they want to make sure that Microsoft doesn't have a monopoly like at that point where it's like, okay, they are the one that have like the streaming industry as like a grip on that. And yeah, they think with Activision that will certainly happen because then they got the Overwatch, the Diablo, Call of Duty, etc., etc. Sony, like Jim Ryan, the boss of PlayStation, is actually going to appear in this lawsuit as we speak as well. Or actually, they're still working on or still talking with Phil Spencer, but Jim Ryan is a thing coming up as well. He is not there in person. He will just like do I think a video call.
Which
He
is
could
funny
not
because
bother.
there was like some tweets that went out from some Xbox spokespersons who were like, yeah, unlike the executives of PlayStation, all of Microsoft's executives, including the CEO Satya Nadella, are showing up in person.
I mean, it's $69 billion.
Yeah.
It's like, of course, if you as like anyone at Microsoft are not like, if there's something more important for you than this deal,
Yeah.
I don't know, man. That's kind of crazy.
Exactly. Well, and it's like not wanting to show up to the closing of your first house or something. Like it's a big deal, and you're just like, whatever. And I get it. It's not like Jim Ryan is the person at the center of this. It's much more about Microsoft than it is about PlayStation. But PlayStation certainly is trying to push this thing and present it as though they are under severe threat from this acquisition. Probably the most interesting thing about what we've seen today, though, has been that the FTC has not focused much on the cloud gaming space, which is where the CMA focused on their end with tons of discussion of cloud computing. And that's basically why they blocked it in the UK. It was because they were saying, listen, this thing's not going to be fair because Xbox and Microsoft have this cloud infrastructure that nobody can really compete with. But with the FTC, they're really focused on Call of Duty, on exclusivity deals, things like that, which I think is much, much harder to win an argument on because Microsoft is just coming out right and saying, nope, we're not pulling it. There's even a section which I thought was quite interesting where Phil Spencer, props to him, he's been very direct about what he thinks of certain things, like very, very direct, not doing the corporate doublespeak, but just saying outright, this is where we're at, this is what we're doing, and how we want to approach it. So if you riff for a second, Jor, I'll pull up the quotes.
Yeah. So, for example, Phil Spencer basically said under oath, like, we're not taking away Call of Duty from PlayStation. Like, he and Microsoft will do everything to make sure that that game and franchise stays on PlayStation. And like, it doesn't get more like official than that.
Phil Spencer, quote, I would raise my hand. I will do whatever it takes. I am making the commitment standing here. We will not pull Call of Duty from PlayStation. End quote.
Yeah.
There is no room for like, well, maybe one, like that's clear. That's what they're doing. This is way more precise than anything any other executive has said. I mean, that is just one and done. That's a little crazy. One thing that they do follow it up with, though, Stephen Totillo, who is reporting on this, that doesn't quite seal it, while Phil Spencer also testified that Xbox would never degrade the quality of any version of a game, especially the most popular version, COD on PlayStation, for example. Part of the antitrust issues here will be the impacts of COD on Game Pass or on Xbox Cloud, which is true, but the question of pulling it from PlayStation seems to be answered.
Yeah, for sure. And but there are already some interesting like things because this like the second day now, and yesterday at the time of this recording, Sony actually said that it would withhold PS6 details from Activision if it's acquired by Microsoft. This actually happened with Minecraft as well. That's why there's no native PS5 version, for as far as I know. because Sony didn't want to send over these dev kits to a Microsoft-owned studio, because then they know everything that Sony is going to do. So, of course, these games are well made in advance to be ready by launch. And so Sony is now basically saying, okay, if you guys like get together, if Activision becomes a Microsoft studio, then we're not sending a PS6 when it's ready, because then Xbox can like look at that and yeah, make some conclusion out of that, which is kind of wild, because that might mean that a PS6 version of the next, like in the future of a Call of Duty game, won't be ready at launch or something.
Yeah, which is wild. Like, I understand
Yeah,
it. It is a conflict of interest, without a
yeah,
doubt. I've always been very curious about the process of next gen consoles, because in theory, Xbox is making the Series consoles while Sony's making the PlayStation 5 consoles at the same time, releasing around the same time, and they should be roughly on the same power level, right?
yeah,
And I've always wondered, like, do they have corporate spies going in and out? Do they have discussions
yeah.
with third-party devs? Like, what are we looking at in
Because
terms of speed, you know?
Yeah, because this like this industry is so big. Like even at a Ubisoft, if Microsoft like drops in and sees that they're working on the next Assassin's Creed, which obviously on every platform, I'm sure they can just walk up to someone's desk and be like, "Oh, what are you doing there? Oh, what's this? Oh, it's like there
Yeah.
are probably many ways to still get your hands on the dev kit.
Yeah.
But of course, having it in house is kind of different. But it sounded more like maybe so because I think for Sony it would actually be very bad as well to not have Call of Duty. Which actually brings me to another thing. Um, Activision came to Call of or before like the series generation, so the generation that we're currently in. Activision actually went to Microsoft and said, "Hey, we want a better revenue split for Call of Duty, because of course for every third-party game, the platform holder, so Sony, Microsoft, Nintendo, get 30% of all the money that is earned through microtransactions, through selling the game. And 70% is for the developer, for the publisher. And like with big games like Call of Duty, they're like, yo, we want a better split. So seems like they actually went to Microsoft and were like, we want a better split. Otherwise, we're not launching Call of Duty on the Xbox Series, because they already had a better deal with Sony, probably 80-20. But that's
Yeah.
kind of crazy. Like there's so much news like coming out of it, stuff that you would never hear, but
Yeah.
because now they want this deal to get through.
And it's so dirt. I mean, I will say Phil has a very good, I don't know if he has a publicist or something. I'm sure he's got people that work with Microsoft and Xbox that help him manage it. But his, I think, role and how people perceive him in the industry is much more like, oh, he's a sweet-hearted gamer. He's a gamer that runs Xbox, and he's more about the games and just making sure players get it. And that's what it is. Maybe the Xbox as a console or a platform isn't as good as the PlayStation, but he, at least, is just a good guy gamer who's a sweetheart. That's very different from like the Jim Ryan perception, which is that he is like a Gordon Ramsay lookalike that also like has never played a video game himself and is just a big business guy. And I think that that's important for the day-to-day operations of Xbox. But interestingly, in these FTC hearings, I mean, you just go through some of these statements that have been made. Phil knows what he's doing. I mean, he is very precisely calling out PlayStation for some of the stuff that they've done, like the paid extra exclusivity, the better splits that Sony has paid for in the past. Spencer talking about how Sony tries to, quote, block Xbox's survival, end quote, in the market, observes that Sony gets a cut of Microsoft games sold on PlayStation, of course, and that some of the money inevitably funds Sony deals like third-party exclusives that hurt Microsoft. So this whole thing that Sony's saying right now is kind of bunk. And furthermore, they go on, Spencer pivots to ZeniMax, said Sony paid to get Deathloop and Ghostwire Tokyo exclusive, and heard that Starfield was going to go that way, which is wild, and people forget that. But apparently, like, that was the news when they broke the ZeniMax acquisition. Apparently, Starfield was, like, they were in talks with PlayStation to have that be a console exclusive, which now is hilarious to think about. But
I mean, it makes sense, because Sony looks at Deathloop and Ghostwire and they're like, those games are nice, but we want the big thing.
Mhm.
And I think they saw with Deathloop. I think that was like, even though the game did not sell very well, it was like cool to have one of the best games of the year exclusive on your platform. And Starfield by the end of this year will probably also be in that top 5 list at least. And that's crazy. Like that was like, and that is kind of what Microsoft is doing right now. They're like, okay, we need to buy stuff, otherwise Sony will struck these deals, because a deal for a third-party publisher with PlayStation is a way better deal, because then you will sell way more copies, because PlayStation has this way bigger install base. So that's I think why way more third-party deals are happening on PlayStation as well.
Yeah. It's fascinating, and they are certainly airing out some dirty laundry, which is just so delicious to see. There's just some beauty here. As for stuff like this, like they of course are asking them, well, Mr. Phil Spencer, you guys bought ZeniMax, and now all of these Bethesda Softworks games are exclusive to Xbox. What makes, or why should we believe that is not going to happen with all of these Blizzard games and all these Activision games and all of this? And he kind of pivots around it, like when asked specifically about Elder Scrolls 6 and what platforms that will launch on. He says it's so far out, it's hard to understand what platforms will even be. We're talking about a game that's 5+ years away, which already, just everybody know
that's crazy, because I have like some like friends who are like not into games, because it was announced at the same time as Starfield in 2018 or 2017 or something.
18. I
Something
think it
like
was
that.
18. I think it was 18.
Yeah. And there was already, I think, one video where we saw like them like doing a face or something like there. It seemed like they were at least working on it, and them now saying it's more than 5 years away. Damn, that's crazy.
Yeah,
but it's
up.
realistic, of course. But damn, hard it feels. Yeah.
Yeah. No, it's
yeah.
And yeah, as for ESV or ES6, notably, Spencer said he didn't even know which Microsoft platform it'd be on.
Yeah.
So he's bracing for next gen, which already, I mean, we're 3 years into the gen. That makes sense.
And like that was something that also came out of like yesterday's one, and I think actually before this as well. But they are both like, Microsoft is expecting the next PlayStation and Xbox to launch in 2028. That would be 5 years from now. Imagine Elder Scrolls as a launch game.
Launch title? That's not a bad way to do it.
That's pretty crazy. Spider-Man 3 and Elder Scrolls 6. Launch games.
Do you think they're going to take that long to do Spider-Man 3?
I mean, Spider-Man, like, the first one was in 2018. And then now 2023, so also 5 years. Of course, they did Miles Morales, but that was mostly a separate team.
That's kind of like a spin-off.
That's now doing Wolverine.
I'm kind of bracing for them to actually go longer. Because I'm worried that they're going to have the fatigue after Spider-Man 2. Because so often when they do because they basically have had 3 Spider-Man games. And I'm sure this next one is going to be awesome.
But Miles doesn't really count though, because like Brian Intihar wasn't really directly working on that, so this will be your second game, like the creative.
But they still kind of sold it as a separate title, even though it was cheaper. It was like, I think $40.
It was more like Uncharted Lost Legacy.
Yeah, I don't know,
but
I guess we'll see.
People don't count it as Uncharted 6 or something. So.
Yeah. Some people try to, even though I think Lost Legacy sucks ass. Anyway, I just triggered Jor. I'm sorry. So I
thought it was fine. It wasn't like, I thought it was.
I thought it was fine. The key to Uncharted though. Yeah.
The open stuff, and to see that then evolve in Lost of Us Part 2, that was kind of cool.
I thought that was cool too. Yeah. I just think that Nadine as a character is somebody they're trying to. It's like, what movie is it? Stop trying to make fetch a thing. You know that it's like a Lindsay Lohan movie, I think. Anyway, it's that whole thing. It's like, we just don't like Nadine. Stop trying to make her a thing. She's not. Okay, chill out. We're good.
You will like her.
You will like her. We swear to God.
Oh yeah, but this is interesting because it kind of like is about the situation as well. Yeah, so I already see you highlighting it as well. But like the Indiana Jones game, of course, from the Wolfenstein creators, Machine Games, like that was similar to Redfall. We heard that as well. That was supposed to be on PlayStation as well. But now Microsoft came in and they were like, no. It's going to be PC and Xbox exclusive.
Yep. It's wild. We'll see. You know, there's a lot of pans or pots on the stove right now. There's a lot of stuff that they announced.
Pans on the stove.
Pans on the stove. I was like, I guess it works, but it definitely doesn't roll off the tongue. But like, this was announced in January of 21. That's crazy that it's been that long, but we haven't seen much of anything. And this is one that Todd Howard is allegedly, I think, executive producing is what his title is.
He probably walks in the room. Yeah, guys, it looks good.
Yeah.
I'm back. I'm going back to space.
Yeah, exactly. He just goes in for the free coffee.
Yeah.
But it's fascinating. They have a lot of things going on that they're working on, which is it's just going to be interesting over the next few years as those projects start to complete. You're going to hopefully start to get a more steady drip of exclusive Xbox games that are of that quality you would hope to see.
Yeah. But it's crazy. Like you said, beginning of 2021, right? That was the same time that we heard about that Star Wars game from Ubisoft, and we already got that extensive like demo and stuff. So it's same sort of time window. So you would think that they are like waiting for, like, it's weird that you have this movie and not even a trailer for it. Like, how far off is this? But it's probably far.
I think they were just like so paranoid about not having anything to show, because everybody always gave Xbox crap for not showing stuff.
Yeah.
And so they're like, look, we have tons. And they just threw out all of the projects they were working on, even though a lot of them were like 5-6 years out.
I mean, this was more like I think, recruitment thing, because similar to what we discussed with Redfall as well, where if you like go work at Machine Games, you think, oh, I'm going to make the next Wolfenstein. And then you come there, what the heck is all this Indiana Jones stuff?
Yeah.
So that's probably why they announced it. Yeah, we're making an Indiana Jones game instead.
And that is probably one of the most fascinating things that we saw in that Redfall coverage we did was, I didn't even consider it before, but for those of you who might have missed that episode, basically there was a big issue where people were being hired to go work at Arcane because a lot of a lot of senior devs were leaving because they didn't like Redfall, basically. And they were hiring new people to come in and start working on it. And they would come in expecting to be working on like a Dishonored or a Prey type of game. And then they walk in, sign the NDAs after they're hired, and see that they're working on Redfall. They're like, oh, well, that sucks. And a lot of people were just frustrated. Whereas if you announce it early, like gamers get excited, they'll keep it in the back of their minds, but then also you're allowed to advertise and say, hey, you'll be working on this game, so you at least know what you're getting into. Which makes sense.
Let's look at the chat. Maybe they have some insights or thoughts regarding this. So someone asked about the chair that Luke. It was too good of a chair for Luke, so he switched it out. But yeah, I do have it says screen.
Yeah, I just gave it to Joria.
Very magically via the webcam, and it suddenly teleported to my room.
Yeah, we use that Wonka Vision. The Wonka Vision, you put it up on there, it scans the candy bar. I just have a bad back, so Herman Miller hooked me up with the Aeron. It's very nice. It's not as gamery, not as much RGB, but it gets the job done. It was Mean Girls. That's what I'm thinking of. Yes, I am a adult grown man that quoted Mean Girls in the middle of a gaming podcast.
Which because I only like watched, and the first one actually like not that long ago.
Oh really? Oh well,
yeah.
There
I
you
don't
go.
know.
It works.
Something I missed. So yeah, the Microsoft Activision stuff, it's still going on. We might have some updates throughout the show. I'm like keeping an eye on the Twitter feed here. They're talking about COD, like they're now focusing on that they want to get Activision for the mobile games, because of course Microsoft not really big in the mobile space, while of course King with Candy Crush is huge. And they're now saying like COD Mobile is a huge percentage of the overall Call of Duty revenue, which is interesting and makes sense why we're seeing like Ubisoft put The Division on mobile, Rainbow Six Siege. We of course had EA try it with Apex Legends, but they will probably do it again. But yeah, this iteration didn't work out. So there is a lot of stuff happening there. And I mean, that's a great look for Microsoft, because like, hey, look at our mobile presence, which is non-existent. So that's why we're getting all this like Activision stuff for our Xbox as well. Oh, that's nice extra. But no, we're doing it for the mobile. I don't know, man. To like zoom out, what was your stance overall on this deal? Like, I think everyone in the gaming community is like, either like do it or not. Like let's just stop. For now, it's like interesting to have some interesting details here and there about it. But apart from that, it's like we've heard about this for more than a year now. So
Yeah.
yeah.
I think
yeah.
like my perspective has always been I don't like big corporations buying slightly smaller big corporations to just conglomerate into these monstrosities, because inevitably it does eventually hurt competition. However, that being said, it is the world we live in. It just is. And people getting upset about Microsoft wanting to buy studios to then make exclusive titles, the people that are most upset about it are Sony players who are upset that now Microsoft is playing the same game that their favorite company has been playing for 15, 20 years. It's just like, yeah, it is literally a taste of your own medicine. And I understand you might not like it, but this is just, if you're going to play dirty, don't be surprised when somebody else jumps into the mud pit with you to play dirty. Like, you shouldn't act surprised when that happens. And so, while in a perfect world, I wouldn't allow like any of these big acquisitions to go through if I was the all powerful dictator of the universe. But that's not the world we live in, unfortunately, for everybody, especially me. So we just have to roll with it. And in this case, I think that this probably in the short term, being 10 to 15 years, leads to increased competition in the console space. So I think it's probably a good thing overall for the gaming industry, because all told, in 15 years, the gaming industry is going to be way different than it even appears now. So who knows what we'll be dealing with then. But I don't know. As for predictions of whether this goes through, I think if they get FTC approval and clearance, which after seeing how hardcore Microsoft is treating this thing, I actually am pretty, I think they probably can offer some remedies to get this through the FTC. And then I think even if the CMA doesn't address it or allow the appeal to go through, I think Microsoft still pushes it through and says, screw you, UK.
Yeah.
Sell through a publisher or something.
Yeah. Activision is not in the UK anymore, but through.
Yeah, let the politicians deal with it. Like the constituents in the UK are going to be like, are you kidding me, you guys? You blocked this, so now I can't play any like Diablo natively through the Battle.net portal. I have to buy it through Steam or whatever else they have to do. Like, it's going to annoy a lot of people, and that's why hopefully the politicians kind of wake up and just say, okay, snap out of it. It's fine.
Yeah. We're the only country now blocking it, and we want to be the Silicon Valley of. No, it's not happening.
Not happening. Shocker.
Yeah, I'm kind of in this same boat. I'm like of two minds, because like we also had earlier this year the Microsoft layoffs, and that then also applied to Xbox. Like because these are like huge like even at Bethesda Game Studios there were layoffs. Not because they didn't like do well or something, just because they had to hit a certain number of people that had to be let go. So then like everyone in the company suffers. Right now, they had a great show at the Summer Game Fest, but right now I'm still not convinced that they can manage studios properly. Like we haven't seen that at all. So them buying even more studios, that's like like they already have way too many studios for like any company at all. And what you really see is that because they're Microsoft, because even if Xbox like shuts down tomorrow, they will still be fine. I also think that means that they're not like as hands-on as Sony is, because if PlayStation is gone, Sony is like they like not as in a very very bad state.
Yeah.
So that's why I prefer it if Activision and Microsoft like just stay separate, because I just think that would be the best for everyone, or for everyone, for like the industry as a whole. Have more third party publishers. Otherwise, you only have like EA, Take-Two, and Ubisoft as like the big companies left. Like Embracer Group, the other big one, is like struggling big time as well. Will close a lot of studios.
Focus is on the rise, at least.
Yeah, but they will never, like, they will always be in that trip or double A sort of space.
Yeah,
right?
very small.
So they won't hit that same level. And then the moment that a Google or Amazon or Netflix or someone grabs another third party, then suddenly there's no one left almost. So and I get it, like it's nice that Call of Duty will be on Game Pass day one, but on the other hand, do we kind of want that? Because in my like some people in the they only play like a few games per year, and Call of Duty is one of them. FIFA, obviously, the other sports games, and if they are then trained to not even pay money for one game anymore, I think that will hurt the whole game industry. If they're like, oh wait, I can also just subscribe to Game Pass and play Call of Duty for a month because I usually only play for a month and then I drop out because all my friends are doing something else. I don't know if that will be good for the industry and for other games that are still coming out at the premium price. If more and more games will be on the subscription that you can get for like $15. They did increase the price, by the way, this week for like a few dollars, but I don't know. I
Well,
want it like for the consumer having more on Game Pass, amazing, but that's like you also see that with the App Store, everything has to be free, and then you get games like Diablo Immortal that cost still the same price as a AAA game, but because they cost so much money, they have to get it back somehow. So they're like making this like sort of grind fest where only the whales can get to the next level and stuff like that.
yeah. Well, it's an interesting point, the conditioning and pricing. I do think Xbox, I actually predicted they would do something like this because it only makes sense. For big titles that are very exciting that a lot of people like really are hoping for, what they've done is they actually for Starfield announced that they're going to be offering early access, which I thought this was a no-brainer, because basically, if you want to play it through Game Pass, you'll just get it on day one. But if you want it at day -5, basically, you can go and buy, they call it the premium edition or the Constellation edition with that little wish.com watch. So you can just pick whichever one you want, and then you get access to the game early, which you better believe a lot of people are going to be doing. So even though it's on Game Pass and they can advertise it, yay, it's on Game Pass day one, they're still going to get millions of people, no doubt, to buy it full price on like Steam this way for cash just because they want early access. So for Call of Duty, we've already seen them experiment with early access stuff. Activision has done that a ton. So has Blizzard with Diablo. So
I mean, Forza did it as well. Like I really think you're making an excellent point. This might be their way forward. Like every big game, sure, day one on game, it's day 5 on Game Pass.
Yeah,
It's gonna be the
technically,
new life.
Yeah.
But yeah, that's a great point.
It's going to be really interesting, but I totally agree. Things will change if these huge titles move to Game Pass and are offered for free. They definitely will be using the fear of missing out to try and get some cash from players in addition to the Game Pass stuff. But we'll just see. The patient gamers will probably win out, but I do think you're going to see pretty much every single major release from Xbox probably launch with an early access period, just because then they can double dip into your wallet. They get the Game Pass revenue, and then they also will get the $60-$70 you pay to play the game 5 days early because you bought whatever edition.
Yeah.
So
yeah, we just still haven't seen the real impact of Game Pass because Microsoft just hasn't launched these. Like if it would be like flipped around and Sony had the Game Pass model and we had God of War, Horizon, and all those games day one, then I think we would have a way better idea of what it would mean. Because I already hear around me right now, it's like, okay, but like on Xbox, everything is on Game Pass, so the barrier to get the $80 game is getting higher and higher. And sure, there will still like right now it's still Hogwarts Legacy selling gangbusters. Jedi Survivor did fine. All those big games with like a big license and stuff, they are still selling like crazy, even though they have the full price. But I'm just not sure if when eventually Elder Scrolls and like you expect all these big games, like if Microsoft is finally firing on all cylinders, then it will be a very hard, I don't know, for it will be just very hard to ask the full price, I think, and I'm not sure if that will really hurt the game industry, because then okay, we are because Microsoft must like do the math. Sure, they get a lot of new subscribers from Call of Duty on Game Pass, but are they losing out on all the like $70-$80 that they would get from people actually buying the game? Is it like balanced? Are they losing money?
Well, I mean, the one thing to think
they,
about, if somebody, like you mentioned earlier, if somebody buys one game a year and that game is Call of Duty, they buy Vanguard or whatever this newer one was called.
yeah.
Can you tell
Modern
I'm
Warfare
checked out?
3.
Yeah. I'm checked out for
trying,
a while.
yeah, they're gonna
Like if they buy one game for, let's just say $70 or even 100, Game Pass now, if you buy Game Pass Ultimate or whatever the raised price is, they're probably getting anywhere from 10 to 15 bucks out of you every month. And if that's the one game you play for a year, that's 12 months of that revenue. You've already pocketed way more.
Yeah, but I don't think they play for 1 year. I think they play for a month. Like that's what you see with all these games. Like even Diablo now. I would imagine that the launch numbers right now are like 40-30% of what it was like a few weeks ago. Like these things drop down. Everyone jumps on the hype and then they move on.
People do jump on the hype, but there's two pieces of this that I think more casual gamers fall victim to, which these pricing models are built on. For one, the most obvious, they hope that you forget you're subscribed to it. You set it up with your credit card and it bills you every month and then you forget.
I'm a victim of this.
Yeah, we've all been there. We've all done it. There's entire apps and services built around telling you this.
One small story about my Apple TV Plus, because on PlayStation 5, you could have like 6 months for Apple TV Plus. And I was like, Severance sounds like a banger show. It is. Totally watch it if you haven't already. And so I did the 6 months for free. And then I forgot about it 6 months later because you think, okay, 6 months is a long time. After that, they didn't drop anything on Apple TV that I wanted. But I don't have an Apple device. And you can only, and I've lost my password. You can only change your password if you have a MacBook, if you have an iPhone, an iPad, or if you go to the Apple Store and on one of those devices, change your password. So I'm like billed every month, and I have to go to a physical freaking store or ask someone in my in my surroundings for,
that's amazing.
For an iPhone.
Well,
that's like next level, like wall gardening.
That's painful. That's like straight up. My wife Nikki does that all the time, where she just can't remember passwords for the life of her, and so she's constantly ending up in that situation where she's subscribed but can't figure out how to unsubscribe. One little thing. I'm not currently sponsored by these guys. Okay, previously I did a sponsorship. I tried their product and I use it all of the time now, and I will recommend it to everybody just because I really think it's impressive. It's this thing, privacy.com. If you just go privacy.com, you'll never have this situation again, because you literally just generate a brand new digital credit card that they create for you, and you specify like it's just for this service, or you could have one just for Amazon, one just for Activision, one just for Steam, whatever, and you can set monthly spending limits, or you can just pause it. So what I've done before is I'll sign up for like Apple TV, or recently I did it with Apple Music. I created an Apple Music card that's just its own card, only used for that. And right after signing up for it, it charged the $10 or whatever. And then I paused it. So now it can't overcharge me.
For me. Yeah. Not a sponsor.
Yeah, not a sponsor. I'm telling you though, I use this damn thing every single day. I love it.
It's like a lifesaver for me.
Yeah.
Because then you also have like a good, like, okay, I'm subscribed to all this stuff in like one view, because I now for one use my PayPal, for the other use my credit card, for the other just use my regular bank account. So it's like all over the place.
Yeah.
But hey, that's a different type of problem.
Yeah, not a sponsor.
It proves your point. It proves your point. There will be people buying or like subscribing to Game Pass in November, forgetting about it, and Microsoft gets more money out of it. My point, though, is, and I know you had like a second wrinkle to this as well, but my point is, I think most people will like unsubscribe. Like, yeah, they will, like, I don't know what this, I'm sure there will, I think only like 10% of the people subscribed forgot about it. And maybe that's like even a lot.
I mean, what I'll say is when I worked at Best Buy, I worked there right as they announced the Total Tech Support membership, which is a $200 a year membership, where you sign up and you get all these services included for free. They include like 2 years of Apple Care or Geek Squad protection, whatever. So it is a good value if you're somebody who is going to use those protection plans. And then also where we used it was like you buy a TV And if you want somebody to come hang it up on your wall, that would be like $250 normally. But if you get the total tech support, whatever thing, it's only $50. So once you add in all these other services, it ends up saving you a ton of money. And I asked my manager one day, I was like, this seems to just lose money. Like we would normally charge people $1,000 for all of these services. Now it's like 300 with all the discounts. How does that make money? And she was the GM at the time. And she said, well, based on what we have, only, I think it was something, it was under 10%. It was like 8% or 8.5%.
It actually used it.
Only 8.5% end up canceling it after that first year. So people just forget, and then it charges again. They initially get upset because they see this $200 charge. And then they just are like, well, I do need the protection plan on that thing I was going to get my wife or get my kid. Oh, well, I'll just cancel it for next year. And then they forget again. And so I think most people forget to cancel it. So I would just probably take a counter. I think you'd be surprised at how many people leave it up.
Yeah, probably.
And the other piece, the second wrinkle that I was going to throw in is that a lot of casual gamers play a big release like Call of Duty for 100 hours in the first week for sure. And then in the subsequent weeks, it certainly drops off, but they still pop in multiple times per month. And having a subscription for that is how they're going to do it, because that's how they'll continue to have access to those games. So I think they've probably done some number crunching and just found that for games like Call of Duty, these big singular releases that some people, it's all they play, it actually ends up being very, very profitable.
And it's like the perfect title. It's not like a game you finish. It's like a game that gets supported for a really long time. So it's basically like you have a subscription to WoW, but it's Call of Duty. Which is also another way to looking at it. But it will be interesting to see if on PlayStation it's like $80. Yeah. And on Xbox you have like that's what people like. That's why Phil Spencer can say, yeah, it's coming to PlayStation, because that's like the best marketing you can have. Hey, pay like $80 €80 here, or go play it for the subscription you maybe already have. So that's like kind of crazy.
And I think Jim Ryan,
if there will be a shift then.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Well, and I think Jim Ryan has hinted at that, where he said recently in like a leaked email or something, he was saying how this is not just about exclusivity with Call of Duty or with these other games. Phil Spencer and his team are thinking much broader about this whole thing. And I think this is part of it. It's all about optics. It's all about the perception. And very quickly, as we've seen, Xbox has established themselves as they're trying to be the most pro-consumer offering. That's what they want. They want gamers to think, where's the best value in the gaming industry? Game Pass. No question. And this would just be another affirmation of that. Like you said, if you're looking at it and you say, oh, you want to play the new Call of Duty, Black Ops 17 or whatever, you could buy it on PlayStation. It's going to be $80. Or you could buy it or play it on Xbox day one for nothing, in addition to your regular subscription. Or maybe they have like a discounted early access period, like we were saying, where instead of having to buy the $100 edition to get 5 days early access, you only have to pay $20 for the upgrade, because it includes the base version of the game on Game Pass. So there's a ton of ways where you can just sort of subtly jab PlayStation into looking like the gougers in the industry, which I think is more what terrifies them.
And that's what's I think also interesting, because we as like gamers that are really like in tune with like the industry think of God of War and Horizon and all these exclusive as like really big deals, and they still are. Like God of War sells a lot and stuff like that. But in the grand scheme of things, if you think about the fact that the PlayStation 5 has already sold 50 million units and God of War Ragnarok sold 10 million units, what is the other like 4/5 of the console base doing? If you already right now in the generation have a PlayStation 5, you're probably a hardcore gamer. Like you're really in tune. But still, you don't buy God of War. While on the Switch, almost everyone buys Zelda or Pokemon, or like the attach rate on these games is insane. So it's gonna be very. What if like the 4/5 is like only the sports, or it's probably like a bit different, of course, but still like with free to play as well and all these other things. Like what if Warzone has like a better or like a lot more free stuff on Xbox? If Xbox can really be the place to play for Call of Duty, Overwatch, Diablo, it's gonna add up. Like for those people that only play those games, it's like they don't care about that one single player game a year that they will maybe miss out on, I think.
Yeah. It's going to be fascinating. And it's like, I saw Sierra in chat was putting up some interesting comments. Like this one, gaming subscriptions are the future. Look what happened with watching TV and movies. Now it's all streaming. No matter what you do, models like Game Pass are the future, and I don't see a problem with it. I think as with every model, like what people will inevitably say is, well, the potential for nickel and diming, the potential for, like as we've seen with Redfall and some other crappy releases, the potential for less than polished releases to come out is high, because there's not that pressure to have every game be a banger. You can have duds along the way, and it's not a big deal, because as long as the catalog is healthy, you can survive some spoiled
Imagine
eggs.
if Redfall was not on Game Pass, it would have sold like maybe 100,000 copies.
Yeah,
like and that's maybe like generous. Like it didn't sell well.
Yeah.
At all.
So I think that's what people will bring up when they mention they're worried about games or game subscription models and stuff. But I would say there's also room for abuse in the more classical way of pricing games, as we've seen with games that are priced insanely high with big DLC packs bundled in. And the simple reality of our industry where it is now, games are more expensive than ever to make, and they have to recoup that money somehow. And the old school way of just, oh, well, you have this massive, amazing game that is priced at $60 and you sell it, and then no DLC, everything's in the game, we're good to go, easy peasy. Those days are for AAA games and quadruple A games. That's just gone. It doesn't work anymore. So they're trying to adjust it and shift it and try to do something else. And
I mean, it still works right now, but the future will likely change that.
And more than anything, it's just like, as gamers demand bigger and badder games in crazier and crazier scopes, like, I'm okay with DLC. I'm okay with something like the Phantom Liberty expansion. I don't see that as like an inherently bad thing, but that's something where I went back and I watched a video from 2014 from, I think it was Angry Joe. And he was like freaking out that they were bringing DLC to a bunch of these games that were releasing at the time. And nowadays, DLC is seen as a generally good thing. But in that time period, something as simple as a DLC expansion was like, oh, they're just trying to squeeze more money out of us, man. And I remember, because I was one of those people that was upset about it at the time. So all this just to say, I think industries change. The gaming industry is shifting and evolving and changing. And we got to fight back on the crappy, abusive stuff, of course. But don't be terrified of change or shifting pricing models and stuff just because they're different from what we're used to.
I just hope that there will be a future where it's like similar to when VR was announced. And it was like, oh, VR, all the games are going to be VR. Well, that didn't turn out to be. Like, it's a fun little thing. Like, it's a new way to experience games, but it's like one of the many. I hope that like the full price games stay, because then like Sony is really saying we cannot like afford these games and then dropping them on PlayStation Plus. Like, these games cost a few $100 million to make. So we have to sell them for a high price. So I don't hope that with the sort of Game Pass like sort of train that it's going to go faster and faster with more people getting in touch with it and thinking that will be the standard. That I don't hope that these enormous games are realistic anymore. We're still far away from that, obviously.
Oh yeah.
And maybe I'm just like a grandpa who doesn't want change or anything. I don't know.
Old Man River over here.
Yeah, but like we've just seen many games like when they come out, or when the industry is changing, like try and adapt, and then we see the online pass, for example. Remember that, where it's like, hey, we wanted to combat people going to GameStop to sell the game. So all these single player games suddenly have a crappy multiplayer mode and an online pass. So if you want to play the game, you have to insert this code, otherwise your secondhand copy won't work. Like, they were all trying those things, and I'm just scared, or like scared is maybe a big thing, but what if like Sony is thinking, okay, we have to go for the subscription model now. The next God of War will be releasing in 4 episodes throughout the year, because that way, like similar to what Netflix now doing with Stranger Things or their big shows, they're also looking at HBO, and they're like, okay, HBO has 1 episode or like 4 episodes a month, and the season is 10 episodes. So they at least have 3 months of money from everyone who subscribes on day one to watch that show. And Netflix is now doing that as well. Stranger Things start in 1 month, ends in the other. So we at least have 2 months of money. And I'm like afraid that maybe that will happen with games as well, because they will be like, yeah, if we drop God of War in 1 month and everyone finishes it in a weekend, that's like $15 that we get. But what if we like launch it in multiple? I'm just curious what will happen.
Oh, there's
and maybe,
definitely.
yeah.
Oh, I'm sorry to cut you off. I was just going to say, I think there definitely is going to be experimentation, as there always is. And some of that experimentation from these big companies is going to overstep, and people are going to freak out, as we saw with like Battlefront 2. If you remember that game, packed with microtransactions. And they overstepped and they overpushed, and then they had to walk it back and adjust. And that's a good thing about the gaming industry, is if companies screw up, they will know about it. You know, we're a very vocal bunch, us gamers.
Yeah.
So there's always going to be that. But just to be clear, I agree. I don't think the industry is just going to move into this mode where it's like cable TV, where everything is just releasing only on cable and it's all episodic. Because even in the example of streaming, which Sierra brought up, which I think is a valid comparison, even in the world of streaming, we still have movies releasing in theaters where you go in and you pay $10-12 for a ticket, you see the movie, and then if you want to stream it afterwards, you can do that. And maybe that's what the early access basically is, just like seeing a movie before its full release on streaming services in the theater. You can play the game 5 days early or a week early by paying the extra money up front.
I mean, in the COVID era, they tried to experiment with like launching on the streaming services, which made sense because all the cinemas were closed, of course. But they quickly like moved away from that because they thought, wait, everyone is paying like $20 for a ticket. That's way more money than what we get from like putting it just on the streaming service.
Yeah.
And then it will like be pirated and stuff like that. Obviously, with games, that's kind of different. But yeah, they're like, that's a good point as well. And we will see. But I think overall, like, I still like Game Pass. Like, I think the idea is great. We just haven't seen the full potential of like we still don't know what it really means for the industry, because Microsoft is just not firing on all cylinders yet. And when they are, we will finally learn. Like, Starfield will be a very interesting thing. And maybe there will be way more eyes on Starfield. Way more people that would never have bought Starfield are now buying the game for $15. And everyone benefits, because we as content creators have way more viewers. Maybe people that would never have played this game are suddenly falling in love and trying the other Bethesda titles. There's a lot of upside as well, like making games in general way more broader and easier for people to get access to. That's, I think, a big plus.
Well, and speaking of Starfield, we had some interesting news drop this week from the one and only Todd Howard. The guy, the man, the myth. He went on the Kind of Funny Xcast, which is a podcast that they do. And he spoke pretty candidly about the game. He offered some extended little information about features and answered some questions people had. One of which I wanted to know intensely. I even made a video saying I was concerned about this particular thing right after the Starfield Direct, and they never mentioned it, never talked about it. But in this interview, they address it, and I think it's a pretty big deal. A lot of other people don't seem to think it's a big deal. But have you had a chance to look through this and see what he kind of mentioned about Starfield?
It kind of reminds me of that discussion we had after the Direct. Of course, during the Xbox Showcase, they had like this 45-minute reveal of Starfield. And yeah, you were kind of like, vehicles, and what about the planets, like the 1,000 planets, and now we learned 10% of those planets have life on them. Why are there more than 100 planets then? That's kind of weird, right?
Yeah, there's a lot of this. I mean, we can just run through this. This was
let's do it.
clipped from John Elden Ring on this Icon Era forum. He linked the full thing. You can go watch it. We also watched it on stream yesterday if you're interested, to my reactions to it. And I just put a video up today kind of with highlights from that reaction. But the key stuff he mentioned, planets are procedural. We already knew that. With handcrafted individual locations that are built, some of which are built specifically for each planet. So in other words, basically, if you go to like an ice planet, there will be, say, a raider base there that you can clear that is specifically tailored for icy environments. So it's not going to look like a jungle outpost when it's in an icy environment. So there will be some stuff specifically built for different planet archetypes. And the way he phrased the placement of these things was kind of interesting. He said, when you land, we will dynamically place things for you to find. Which is interesting to me because that implies that it's not like locked in. It implies that when you land on the planet, they're going to then simulate or calculate where things should be placed, sprinkle them out. Maybe it's the same for every player based on like a seed, like in a lot of other procedural games. Or maybe it is that planets will be different for every player. I think they would have mentioned that if that was the case. But he phrased it in a very kind of strange way that confused me.
But that is procedurally generated, right?
Mm-hmm.
That it's probably going to be different for different players apart from those handcrafted areas.
Yeah, like dynamic placement of, say, animals and things like that will, of course, be different. But one of the things that you would expect to see in a lot of games, even in something like No Man's Sky, if we travel to one really obscure planet way off over here, orbiting this star, we go there, we can, like, we're on the same planet. It looks the same. Everything's the same. Because while it's procedural, it kind of procedurally generated the whole thing, and now it's locked in place. What he phrased it like, and maybe this was just worded poorly, is that when you land, that's when it procedurally generates for that player.
So it will probably be different if we like go to the same planet because it's not like multiplayer.
Yeah.
If we go to the same planet, which will probably even be hard to find apart from these 100 that actually have life on them. I'm already thinking because I'm gonna make guides for this.
It's gonna be a headache.
Go to this planet, and dude, I went to the. There was nothing there.
What the hell
are you pointing?
You got your work cut out for you, man. This is gonna be tricky. What do you think of the 10% of life, or only 10% of planets have life on them? I've seen some people freak out about this, and I want to know what you think of this. Is this like a red flag?
So that's like creatures and like enemies to kill, right?
And plants, just like life.
I think someone, Branka already said, so that mothers can fill them up, of course.
That's what people have been saying.
I mean, that's like, I at least want to know before I see the planet if it has life on it or not. Because I don't want, and I think they must have thought of this, but I don't want to go to different planets and then every time I land, which will probably be a load screen and stuff like that, and then discover, oh, there's nothing here. I'm gonna go away, and then do it again, and then do it again. So I hope that you have like an indication of what you're getting into. But like, I think for the modders, that is interesting, and you can probably still make a base on these planets. So you can, I think, I'm all for choice overall. Like, I think, and that's why, for example, with Valhalla, the fact that you had to go through each region, that would have been like this. If you had to go to each planet, even if there was no life on them, because you could argue some of the Valhalla arcs, did they have life? You know what I mean. But what, like, if I can just play the game and only go to these 100 planets that actually have something valuable for me, then it's fine. But if there are people who want to get lost and want to build or like want to find this amazing planet where they can like role play and make their own like base and spaceship and all that stuff, more power to them. But I don't want to go there. Like, let me have this choice where I can only go to the 100 planets that actually have life. I still think the 10% number is just so low. It's like, why?
Well, I think it just reaffirms something. I think a lot of the stands for this game are hesitant to admit, which is this game is a lot closer to No Man's Sky in 2016 than it is to Star Citizen or to No Man's Sky of today. There are planets, and Todd hinted at this many times throughout the interview, where he's like, some planets are really resource heavy, so you're going to go there to get resources you need. So presumably, some planets, the entire planet only exists for you to fly there, land, mine some iron ore with your little laser beam, and then get back in your ship and leave. And that might not be super exciting, but that's what this seems to be. I've seen some people say on Twitter and even in chat when we were streaming this that, oh, well, no, this is because you can build a base that spans the entire length of the planet. So the entire planet will be just a gigacity that you build. No, that's a lie. That's stupid. That's not true. As far as we've seen, there are like limitations to base building. Modders, I'm sure, can fix it on PC, but this is not like magic. Okay, there are limitations, and some of these planets seemingly exist just to offer resources. I think the 10% number sounds small.
Yeah, but you could have those resources on the 100 other planets as well. Like, why do I have to go to a lifeless planet to farm the iron ore?
Because then he can't say there's over 1,000 planets. Because 1,000
planets. Do you really
planets
think that they did like this survey, or like they had their like they must have like asked a lot of people, like, is that appealing? Is that like a thing on the box, right? 1,000 planets, that someone goes over to their friends like, did you hear this Starfield game is over 1,000 planets? Oh my god, I now have to play it.
I think so.
Really I probably
think, well, and Todd, he is a tremendous salesman, as I've said before, and he understands big round numbers are appealing to people. If you say
if you say 100 planets with life on them, for me, that sounds way more appealing.
Yeah, but 1,000, more than 1,000 planets that are all totally different, that you can explore wherever you want and however you want. That is the Todd Howard stamp of marketing that he has. And
he wants to go beyond.
He wants to go so big. But one of the things that I thought was like, he phrased it again, that it was like so used car salesman. What he said is, he said, there's the old quote from Buzz Aldrin that I just love. And it's where he quotes on the beauty of the desolation in space. I was like, yeah, I know that quote. It's true. Like, yeah, there's a weird beauty in the desolation of a lot of these astral bodies, for sure. But he used it in context of some of the planets, or technically most of the planets that are in this game, saying that there are some planets which are going to be barren by design. They're not going to have pretty much anything there, because he finds that emptiness, I guess, beautiful in some way. Yeah,
again, like if you would ask me, do you want the 100 planets that are also in this game and not the other 900, or do you want like, what would be your? I would like let the 900 lifeless planets be there for the people that want to go there. If I don't have to go there, if I don't want to, if I know what I'm getting into before going to a planet, that's fine, because I do get that people like the fact that there is always something, unless you like play this game for 5,000 hours or something, there's always something new to explore, even if that new is just like a different brown,
a different
orange planet. Yeah,
a different rock
ball that you haven't been to before. Like, that's fine to me. Let those people have their fun. If I can just like have fun on the 100 planets, then I will just be there.
Yeah, if the agency allows you to just do whatever you want to do, cool. My fear is that they're building in, they've hinted at it a couple times, in order to travel to further planets and presumably to get to the end game, pushing further and further along, you are going to need to upgrade your ship, which is something he confirmed in that interview. Which again sounds an awful lot like No Man's Sky in 2016, where you had to upgrade your jump drive to be able to get closer to the center of the galaxy. Like, this is all stuff we've heard before. And my fear is that there's going to be main story quests where it's basically like, okay, we need to get to this planet, but you don't have the equipment for it yet. So go out, get yourself mining, and get the materials necessary to upgrade your ship. And it's basically going to just send you off to grind on those empty planets for an extended period of time. which I would bet money is probably at least in the main story campaign a couple of times. But
Mm.
here's one thing I need your opinion on. Okay. And I guess if you look at the stream, you can see, I'm going to pull up Google Earth to demonstrate this. Okay. So we're going to get all educational on this bitch. So
Whoa.
what we've seen,
Oh yeah.
they have said that they're allegedly, okay, I'm going to say allegedly because maybe he's just been tricking us this whole time. There is no in-planet flight. So you cannot fly your ship from one point in the planet to another. You have to, it's basically a load screen where you'll be transported like fast travel.
I don't mind that, by the way. I think that's
okay. And there's no rovers or vehicles or mounts or anything at all. You will be running on foot. So presumably,
a jetpack is super fast, you know, man.
Yeah, you can
It's like,
bounce.
really?
You can bounce around. So in this, by that description, if we went to a planet such as this one, you guys might be familiar with, and let's just say we wanted to land on an island. Let's go over to Japan, and let's just pick like this as our landing spot, Iwai Island. Okay, we land over here. There's our landing pad right there. We land, and then we start exploring on foot. And this is all procedurally generated, big forest. Super cool to be able to explore this freely. Awesome.
You mentioned this being your town, and someone is like, "This all procedurally generated."
Somebody's like, yeah. Look at this clearly fake town. So like
all those workers, what the heck, man?
Yeah, they're clearly, this whole thing is a construction. But like if we go here, is it gonna work? So we're down here exploring freely, but then I'm playing the game and I say, you know what? I want to go over there. I want to go over there because I have this whole planet to explore. I just explored this whole area. It was awesome, but now I want to go over there. You can't, like, presumably you could swim for like an hour or two to get over there. But what they want you to do, because they can't figure out how to put mounts in the game or rovers or little like speeder bikes or anything, what you would have to do is back out into the menu, into the map, and then select a new landing zone over here. And then it would give you a load screen. It would show the little animation of the ship taking off and then landing at this new patch, at this lovely school. And then, boom, we're over on this piece of land and we can explore this one. But to go any serious length or distance, there are load screens between. To me, in a game that is about free and open exploration of planets, that is bafflingly stupid. And we all know why it is that way. It's not there because it's a creative choice. It's there because their rinky-dink engine can't use vehicles. This is something I've heard from countless people who mod with the creation engine. It's just not able to keep up with fast-moving vehicles. So I see this as a pretty big deal that is going to seriously hamper exploration. But very few people seem concerned about it. I will say in this like thread on this forum, people are expressing.
You already have your
frustration,
thumbnail for after
still.
lunch. I told you so. Or what was that? The one you actually put up today?
I told you so.
I told you guys so.
When I did that video, people, or the first time after the Starfield showcase, I said this is a concern for me, and I don't know why more people aren't talking about it. And there were comments with hundreds of upvotes of people saying, I think there's rovers, they just haven't shown it to us yet. They're going to show us in a future showcase. There are no rovers. There is nothing. So do you actually care now that that's been debunked, or were you just simping and making excuses? We all know it's just simping and making excuses, but I still see this as a big deal. What do you think? Do you think this harms exploration?
I just still think it's like hard to say because we don't know how large these planets will be. If I hope and I think that they made these with like on-foot exploration in mind. So then, sure, it is kind of weird that if that's the case, that there are multiple landing spots that you can choose. Like, why do that? Why not make one landing spot? Because everything is like easy to access. So that is interesting. Yeah. Apart from like, I don't know. I think I hope that the planets are just like small open spaces that you can like easily traverse, and that will be fine. And I think we will see. I think it will be very fun to play Starfield for like a few weeks and then go to Cyberpunk, because it's like the complete opposite, where it's like everything is made with like thought in mind.
Yeah.
And that's of course like way more cinematic and stuff like that. But yeah, I don't know. Like, you might totally be right. I wasn't watching the gameplay or the presentation thinking this would have been great with mounts, because we just don't know the scope. And from what we've seen from the sort of the one they showed last year, that seemed pretty small. And if you can like see a mission, like I think a lot of people will play it like this. They already see the mission marker on the planet before they actually go to the planet. They will park their ship or whatever, like land their ship close by, get out, do the mission, get back on their ship, fly out. They might like, oh, what the heck is this creature doing over there? I'm gonna walk there. But because things that are like very far away, you probably won't even be able to see them. You maybe won't even go there to explore. I would not be surprised if some people play like that. So then I don't know if I mean, it would totally help create this exploring the unknown feeling with my. I think vehicles would totally help with that. But I think it's just hard to say without like actually playing the game if
No,
it will be a huge issue.
I would agree. It is seemingly about scope. And for me, like the reason I'm pointing to this is because it's the one sticking point with all of this. I play BGS games and I know the combat's not going to be the best. We know this. I know the stability is not going to be the best, or graphics not going to be the best. Like, we understand this. But the one thing they've always been really, really good at is making sure exploration feels fulfilling and is captivating for long periods of time where you can just get lost. And with the scope that they're describing by saying over 1,000 planets, not 1,000 planetoids or something, but 1,000 planets, that I don't think even implies that pretty clearly, I think, demonstrates an excessive scope or an extreme scope. And to have something as basic as faster travel outside of like a little boost pack, that to me is just shocking. And maybe the whole thing is built like with smaller planets, or maybe it's just the illusion of a planet. So you land and then it's just kind of a quickly generated thing and it looks kind of similar to where you explored before, but it's not actually like just one big map for you to explore wherever you want. If that's the case, I think they just need to communicate that, because if you're telling me there's just planets and yeah, you can explore the whole planet, but you have to do the planet on foot, that to me is really dumb. But I understand, the best way for us to find out is just going to be to see it.
But I think it might be that we will very quickly find out that exploring is not rewarding. That there will be these locations that they put on the planets, like that is worth getting to. That's where you find missions. That's where you actually have enemies to kill. And all the other parts are just like bare bones. And sure, you will find iron ore or whatever they will call it that you can like mine. But at one point you're like, yeah, is this worth it? Not anymore. And then you will just be focused on the objectives.
Yeah.
Maybe that will be the game, and that instead of having multiple things on one planet, they have this galaxy, and those are the multiple things, if that makes sense.
Yeah. Well, and it's like, Goose in chat says, and I do agree, it sounds like this. It sounds as if everything relevant to you will be spawned around you, which I think is what they've described, where they'll then, cast out like the relevant things, the outposts, so that you can spot them and get to them relatively quickly. But I agree with the follow-up to that. It defeats the purpose of even exploring the entire thing, that thing being the planet. It does make me wonder, well, then why, like, if it's not a planet, but it's just like a location on a planet, that's no different than like what Jedi Survivor did, where it's a planet, but it's basically just a map that looks different because it's assigned to a planet that you're traveling to. And if that's what we're doing, okay. I would probably prefer it if they just came out and said, no, like these are big maps that are like for the planet, but it's not like an actual spherical thing that you're exploring. It's just a massive map assigned to each planet. Okay, I can respect that. But pretending or acting as though they are full spherical planets for you to explore, but you have to do it on foot is just bafflingly stupid to me. But anyway, I'll stop beating the dead
I think that
horse.
you can like walk in. Maybe that's like a very stupid thing to say, but can you actually like go right and then end
Yeah.
left from your ship?
That would be a great question to ask them because, as far as we understand it, it is a planet that you can run on foot.
Yeah.
And if it's a
So
contiguous or continuous land mass that you could walk all the way around, could you do that even if it would take you days or weeks or months of walking on foot?
probably not, but you would be funny though if you could like already see your ship in the distance when standing next to it.
I don't. It's gonna.
Like how the
There's going to be people that test this stuff, and I am ready. People were saying in chat when we looked at this yesterday, we'll just set movement speed in the console commands to 999999999.
yeah. Like
and
there
see
will
if you
be a
can.
mod for that, but that will probably break some things that
Oh,
you
yeah.
don't know.
As is tradition. With
It will be fascinating. But it also like an interesting news story we got from the FTC lawsuit is that if the game was gonna be on PlayStation or basically more than PC and Xbox, it probably would not come out in September. So that's like a very interesting also wrinkle to the fact that hey, making an exclusive has some upsides because of course these developers can just focus on one platform, which sometimes means that it's launching faster than if they would do
faster
multi-platform.
and maybe, please, dear God, more polished. Time will tell. Other things they mentioned, it's designed to be played with companions or solo. You can make your choice. Decisions can anger your opponent or your companions, just like in previous games. Ranking system adds patches and badges to your spacesuit and are tiered depending on what you want, just a different type of skill tree. There's no alien fishing in the game. Sorry, everybody. Ships are upgradable. And this is one thing that they touched on a few times, which I thought was also interesting. Todd stressed that ship customization and outpost building are considered very late game activities. This is not something that you're going to be doing within the first 10 hours of the game. It's not like you're going to start, complete the intro, and then build your first ship. This is something for late game when you have a ton of money, credits, resources, all of that, which is going to be interesting. Do you remember if they communicated that way with like the Fallout 4 base building? Because they have you do tutorials for that pretty much immediately with the
Maybe it
Minutemen.
turned some people off, and that's why they saw, okay, let's not do that. But on the other hand, now in the direct, it wasn't clear at all. So if some people were like, oh, I'm gonna make ships all day, and then you learn, oh, I have to play 50 hours to get to that part,
Yeah.
that's not a good look either.
It's gonna be interesting. I mean, as with the, it's just funny because so many people have been saying, I'm kind of disappointed by a lot of what he said, but mods can fix most of it. That is just the tale as old as Bethesda, honestly.
Yeah,
like
yeah.
whenever there's something that you're kind of bummed about, well, modders will figure it out. They'll fix it up, and that's
I thought
true here.
you were going to say that they always have this nice shiny presentation, and then a month later or something, you have like all the actual news come out, and it's like, oh, it's
yeah.
let's temper our expectations a bit.
Yeah, temper expectations because again, whenever you deal with a phenomenal salesman, he's going to tell you all of the great stuff, and then sneakily smuggle in the crap.
I mean, he could not. He didn't have to do the kind of funny interview though. So,
True, he didn't, and I gotta give him praise because a lot of game devs have not been willing to be that open and honest. And I do think Todd actively attempts to rein in expectations because every time he announces a game, it goes crazy. And so he tries to pull it back in. He's done interviews where he says that's a concern. He doesn't want people overhyped because they're not a magical studio. They're a few hundred people. They have limitations with what they can do. So I do think he makes an active effort.
Yeah.
Which you got to give him credit for. I put more of the blame on the overhyping on like casual YouTubers, Twitter users that are not concerned with being factually accurate with what they're saying.
Yeah, and we learned from Cyberpunk, let's just not do that, right? Because I am seeing some things that kind of remind me of that, with similar people kind of, thinking this is the second coming of Jesus, just like with Cyberpunk.
Yeah, it's like, guys,
I do think though, and I do have a bit more confidence. It doesn't feel as shady as Cyberpunk, where no one played it, or where we only saw like very curated demos. and stuff like that, and where features they showed did not end up in the final game, etc., etc. I don't think that's happening here. And with him coming on the show, kind of shows confidence as well. He's like chilling there. The game is probably already done. They're like really taking the extra weeks to polish it up. So I really hope. I mean, they're doing early access.
Yeah.
So.
Well, and I think you gotta again give him credit because he didn't have to do all of this, and I think that deserves some applause for sure.
But still, yeah, keep that in mind. It's gonna be.
And again,
it's still Bethesda. Like the last thing Redfall, Fallout 76, Wolfenstein Youngblood. Like we have to keep those things in mind. They thought those were ready as well.
Yeah, whenever you like find yourself saying, well, but Todd described this as like having amazing graphics, or they totally redid their engine. Yeah, guess what game he said that exact same thing about on stage live? Fallout
16
76.
times.
16
times.
16 times the detail.
Like
nice.
He's done this before, okay? So we know he's willing to, at least. He's willing to say those marketing things, those quick little sound bites for games, even when it's not factually true, or at the very least it's dubious. So be skeptical as always. As for other last minute things, just to wrap this up, Final Fantasy 16 launched this week. I played a little bit of the demo. I'll be real, I think I have too much on my plate, and I think a lot of other people are in the same bet or same spot. So I don't think I'm going to be playing this anytime soon. What's your stance on it?
I really like it. I played the demo like a few weeks ago when a lot of people were like, "Oh, you gotta play this," but then I was still like playing Diablo, and at one point I was like, "I hear so many good things about it. I know I'm gonna play the full game. Let's just pick it up." And kind of blown away by how mature it was. I thought overall this was like a really good showcase of why demos still make sense, because like a lot of people, like Final Fantasy is always an interesting sort of series, and I think Square Enix is kind of struggling with that, where they have the fans, they will be there day one, but how do you like convince the other people? And for some reason, a boy band going on a road trip with a car in a fantasy world was more appealing than a medieval fantasy game, Final Fantasy 16, that takes a lot of cues from Game of Thrones and stuff. So yeah, they kind of had an uphill battle, and they showed it, of course, many times during showcase. So I think at one point people were like, looks cool, I guess. But then playing the demo, you really see the production value, the cutscenes. Like you're watching like a Final Fantasy movie sometimes, with how massive and huge all these icons, these sort of godlike monsters are that are fighting. I am like, it's a massive game. It's like 40 hours to do the main story. One of the critiques I have is that the demo really shows this super narrative focused cutscenes. Like you're, I think, like 45 minutes watching cutscenes, and the rest of the time you're playing. It changes, of course, later on, but there are a lot of sort of like the pacing takes kind of a nosedive. Sometimes you have kind of these very hype moments where you have just like in the demo these like huge bosses fighting. Like every time you're like, this feels like the final boss battle in any other game, but it's like the first boss that I'm encountering. And there are many of those moments throughout the game. So it's worth it to keep playing for that. I think the story is interesting enough. The combat is really, really good. And they like drip feed a lot of new powers. You're like, in a lot of other games, it feels like you have a skill tree. And sure, there will be some upgrades here and there, but here you're constantly getting new powers. You're like, I want to use all of them. I can only choose 3 of them, while there are like way more in the game. They are like doing way less of an RPG, of course. Final Fantasy, one of the like very well-known JRPGs. They're really focusing more on the action part of it. So there are some items that do have an interesting impact on your gameplay, but you're also finding a lot of items that just give plus 12 attack, and you're like, okay, is that it? There are like 2 gear slots and 1 weapon slot and 3 as accessories. So there's not a lot there, but I still think if you love the demo, you will probably love the full game as well. And it's a special game, and I just love that they're really going crazy with these cutscenes, with these boss fights, where You have multiple stages. Every time you're like, oh, I need to take a break from this boss fight. It was amazing. And then suddenly there's like an even crazier boss fight waiting for you a few minutes later. It's like, wow. So
Yeah.
I'm kind of blown away by some parts, but it's still like it's still a game. No, it's still like hey, I need you to kill these freaking chocobos that are harassing the villagers. They are still like, it really feels like they're trying to make this game longer than it was. If they just like went from cutscene to big boss battle to big boss battle, it would have still probably been a 20-hour game. For some reason, they felt the need to go for the 40 hours. So yeah, also have to run around and do some stuff that you don't really care about. But yeah, the combat is so great. So,
And
I'm
I think
having a
that's part of the reason a lot of people have been, like me, interested but almost intimidated by it at the same time, because we still have Diablo, we still in some cases have Tears of the Kingdom to finish, we have all of these games on our to-do list.
Yeah,
And it's like, Final Fantasy 16 looks great, I just don't think I'm gonna get to it anytime soon, so I'm gonna wait.
Yeah, I get that, but I think what Diablo and Zelda are, they're really gameplay focused, and that's why I think playing this game is really cool, because it finally has those huge narrative moments, those cutscenes where you're like, what the heck is going on? And in those other games, it feels like the gameplay and how you approach a situation is way more key. Here's like a very linear game. There are some open spaces, but it's more just like to give you a feeling that the world is big, but you're still like moving through zones in like a linear path. But it's those cutscenes that are like, oh my god, this guy is like turning into a freaking god. Everything around me is like, they're not holding back in any regard, and that's kind of insane. You're not, never, I think they went like, we can't do that, our budget like won't allow it. No, go crazier, go crazier, go crazier. So that's why I think in this year where we didn't have like the cinematic experience on this level, I think, yet. So that's why I still think, even if there are a lot of other games, this is worth it to check out.
Well, there you go, everybody. Check it out. Other little tidbits, little correction to a story about Skull and Bones that went out. Just to touch on this real quick.
Stop it.
I'm sorry.
Stop it.
Last thing. Skull
No,
and
I mean, just stop with the skull, because when you think it can't get worse,
Well,
it gets worse.
this one actually, this correction makes it slightly better, okay? Because basically what happened is they announced at the Ubisoft event, hey, we're going to do a beta, right? With that like weird music thing that they did.
Oh,
Yeah, you remember that. That's the reaction most people had. So they announced this beta, and it allowed you to sign up for console, like PlayStation, Xbox, or on PC. And then they cut the console beta. At least that's what it seemed like. So a bunch of people were like, oh my God, they're canceling betas now. It just keeps getting worse. Apparently what this is, an update posted to Insider Gamers article that broke this from Tom Henderson. The update says a developer in the Skull and Bones Discord, so somebody working on the game, has said that the test, quote, was never intended to be for console, despite players being given the opportunities to sign up for PlayStation 5 and Xbox Series consoles. Whether or not that's true, I mean, once again, it's another screw up with this game, which is just really, really funny that they got to the point of doing like a whole trailer and including that in the trailer or in the splash screen, whatever, that called for people to sign up for the beta. It's still really, really funny that it lasted.
But it had, I think, the logos actually on the website, and then they removed it. So that's why they thought it was going to be PC only.
Yeah, huge miscommunication between the marketing staff, if this is true. Or it could be that they were going to do it on console and they couldn't get it working, so they canceled it, and then they just said, oh no, we never meant to do it. Who knows?
Still, if they only meant to do it on PC, this game should come on console as well. It was supposed to come out last year or like in 2018, like if you really go back. But why are we still... And that's why I thought it was like genius to do the song, because they can't do a trailer anymore. Everyone is like sick of it.
Yeah.
So I thought this was like an interesting way to do it. But what the heck? I mean, I don't know, man. Let's do the Skull and Bones update every week. There's probably something.
Honestly, there probably is something like at least once a month, just like, okay, and they sent out this tweet that they deleted later because it included 15 typos. It's just like every time they have a chance to do something, they just slightly screw it up, which is just painful to watch. But there's that. Have there been any other last minute breaking news items in the FTC thing that you've seen?
I haven't. I think the last thing, yeah, they're talking about like what will be exclusive now. So I see. Can you make same promises for all the Activision content? Because again, like Call of Duty is gonna be on PlayStation and the future of PlayStation as well. Can you do the same about Diablo? Can I promise? Am I able to promise? Are you able to bind a corporation today? I think the point has been made. So FTC is basically saying, okay, so yeah, you're saying Call of Duty is gonna be exclusive. What about the rest? And Phil Spencer just cannot confirm that the rest will be on other platforms. Basically, kind of saying it will probably only be Call of Duty that will be.
Yeah.
And Overwatch 2 will probably stay, but Diablo 4, that's gonna be an Elder Scrolls 6 situation, probably, right? So it's gonna be on Xbox.
I think so. I would think so. And I mean, the whole thing is just kind of a gotcha thing where they're just like, yeah, so make your plans for the next 20 years very clear here and state them outright. It's like, well, I mean, we're a corporation. We're constantly changing stuff. They might decide Diablo 4 makes more sense to also keep on PlayStation. Or they might say, Diablo 5, we're going to bring just to Xbox. Who knows? I mean, if they're paying $70 billion, that probably is a consideration. But yeah, just who knows? I think that if the FTC is acting in decently good faith, though, and is willing to offer remedies for most of this stuff, I would imagine it gets across the board somehow. Because again, we've seen the CEO of Microsoft, a multi-trillion-dollar company, coming and speaking at this event. And that shows how committed the overall company is to getting this deal across the table. And if literally any company, maybe Apple would be the only other company that would be quite as good at this. But if any company in the world could get this through, it would be Microsoft or Apple or maybe Amazon. Those three, I think, have the capacity to just make something like this magically happen. And so we'll see. Guess we're going to find out. And the very last thing, I know I already said that, well, cringe, Luke. The last thing I'll mention, just because this also came out during the FTC stuff, is that Microsoft thinks that the Sony Project Q, the little handheld remote play device, is going to be priced under $300, which they mentioned in some discovery documents that went out, which is exactly where we thought it would be. Important to note, they don't say under $250, they don't say under $200, it's under $300, so probably priced around $299 or maybe $249 at the very best.
That would be funny if it's like $299.
It's technically under.
Under 300.
I swear to God, though, if they price this damn thing at $300, they are out of their minds. It will be really funny.
I mean, the freaking DualSense Edge that doesn't have a screen is like $200.
I agree, and this thing sucks ass. So, I have people in chat that think it's so funny that I don't like this thing. The battery life is horrible. It's laughably bad. Okay, do you keep it plugged in all the time?
No, basically, yes.
Because the battery life sucks.
Yeah. It's really bad. But I love the fact that I have my, like, I think it's like PS4 sticks.
Oh, yeah, the rounded. I do the rounded ones, too.
Yeah, I love it.
Yeah.
But I never use the back buttons, actually.
Same.
Only for running and stuff.
I took them
So,
off.
yeah, for only the analog sticks from the PS4, that's not worth the price. To be fair, though, I got it. So, I should not give you any recommendations on this, but yeah, it's super expensive. But that makes me think that $250 is even like a Switch. The price of a Switch is that cloud device.
How insane is that? I don't know. Maybe I'm out of touch, but to me that seems like a pretty damn big deal. Like
if that's that much money.
If it's that much, like I don't know who. Because everybody in chat was like, yeah, dude, Luke, it's not like a commuter's device. It's a bathroom device. It's the device you keep for when you're pooping. You play on it when you just want to hop on for 20 minutes. And I'm like, maybe I'm just really efficient with my bowel movements. I'm not sitting on the toilet for an hour or two. Like by the time I get that launch and I get the game running, I'm done with my business, you know? Maybe I'm weird.
Yeah, I mean, they are going to do streaming with PS Plus Premium. They're trying that. So what Xbox already has with Game Pass, so that you can like stream PS5 games just with the subscription. That would already like make this device more likable, because then you don't have to. Because right now the remote play situation sucks. Because I use it, and sometimes when your PlayStation is like on, because you have to have it in standby mode or whatever. If something happens and there's nobody home, you're like connecting to the remote play, and it's like, yeah, sorry, your place is not connected or whatever, and then you're fucked. So then you brought this device on your holiday break, and you can't even use it because your PS5 got unplugged or whatever happened.
Yeah. Or
So-
like just a power outage. We've had hailstorms
Yeah.
the last few weeks where our power will just drop out only for like 10, 20 seconds.
That's enough.
But it's enough so that now the PS5 is completely shut down. You can't connect to it remote. You can't do anything. Doesn't auto update games. Like, and we'll see. Maybe they figure this out and it'll be amazing. I've said to people,
I will probably get it though, just because.
I'll probably
I'm just
try it just to be
curious.
like, yeah, see, I put my money where my mouth is. I still think it sucks even after buying it. Or maybe it'll convince me and it'll be amazing. I've said the same thing about that Apple VR headset. I was like, maybe I'll buy that just to like try playing Candy Crush on it or something, and we'll make a video out of it. Because that thing, or we'll do like a whole skit where I'm trying to take
You
pictures.
gotta make a lot of
family
videos
events.
out of it to have it be worth the price.
I'm gonna go to all my sponsors. I've made a
Yeah.
mistake. Please sponsor this video. Anyway, guys, do you have any closing thoughts before we wrap up?
No, I think we covered a lot. Yeah, we're getting in that quiet period, right, where all the games have come out, and the next big one is, yeah, unless you care like about Baldur's Gate and Armored Core, but that's all like end of August. So we're really, for the first time this year, while last year was like a huge drought between, I think May, like Lego Star Wars, and September games or something.
Yeah.
Now we're finally in 2023 having a quiet time. We finally get some rest, chill out, enjoy the sun, touch some grass, and then yeah,
yeah,
have
finish
some
Diablo.
gaming
Yeah.
finish all those games that came out that you still got laying around. Yeah, play Final Fantasy 16. That would be my
That's the
tip.
good stuff. Yeah. Well, I am glad to be back, even though I know it didn't really feel like I was gone that long. Shout out to my wife for being willing to hold the house down while Lockie naps and while she's wrangling a baby, so that I can pop down here for an hour or two for these streams and videos and stuff. And yeah, thank you to everybody, of course, who came into the stream and hung out with us live. That's always amazing. We appreciate you greatly. And as always, if you enjoyed the episode, check it out on streaming platforms, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, all of those things. We're on there, and ratings are greatly appreciated. But with all that, thanks for watching, guys. Thanks for chilling. We'll see you
Thanks a lot.
in the next one.
Yeah, probably Wednesday. We will see.
We'll see. Much
Keep an
love,
eye out.
everybody. We'll see ya.
Bye.
Bye.